Hey, what's up? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Roll Pod, an Alabama sports podcast from Bama 247. I am Cody Goodwin. We got the gang all here this morning. Alex Scarborough, Mike Rodak. Guys, we are a week away. Have you filed your taxes?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, first week of February.
Yeah.
You do it that early?
Yeah, as soon as I get all my forms. I want my
must be
refund.
getting money back. That's why.
Why would I let the federal government have my money for longer, interest free? I want the money. Well, I was going to say to put it in the stock market, but shit, like
well, now you can buy low.
If you have that theory that the government shouldn't have your money longer, you shouldn't be withholding more, right?
Right. Well, you try to get it as close to zero as you can.
Yes.
But it's really the state. Alabama, always I get a big refund. I don't know why. I guess it's a change. But I withhold the minimum for Alabama. So I don't know. I'm not an accountant, but I do my taxes early. And I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Hopefully you wrote it off.
Do you guys use an app or do you have a tax person you go to?
I have a tax person I go to because when I started at ESPN, I was a contract employee and quarterly taxes was, I just couldn't figure it out. Now I just have an accountant and I don't even know why I'm giving him my money.
I have one, but mostly because of my wife's.
So you also have a tailor too. Mike's big time over here.
Well, but I needed when I moved here, like my first year, I had taxes in New York and Alabama. Like,
woof.
Try to figure out residency and all of that for the years that you move. That same thing when I moved from Massachusetts to New York, it was a pain in the ass.
So I didn't realize, just kind of asking around the rest of the Alabama beat, some people use TurboTax, some people use TaxAct, some people have a tax person that they go to. I didn't realize there was such a variety.
I'm terrified of getting it wrong and then being liable for it. It's just, I don't know. I don't want to screw with the federal government.
There is another big happening, obviously, in a week. The transfer portal is going to open up. That'll be something that we're going to pay close attention to. We're not going to talk about that today. We'll touch on that probably next week when it opens.
Mike will.
I'm going to do my best to steer us away from the portal conversation because I know that there's a lot of that coming up in the next, really, I guess, the rest of the month, for the most part. We are going to talk about the upcoming A-Day spring practice. It's not a spring game coming up on Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium. I believe it starts at noon. You can't watch it anywhere. So if you want to see A-Day, subscribe to Bama 247 because all three of us are going to be in the building. We're going to have various updates and observations throughout the day. But then also, if you do want to actually see it with your own two eyes, you're going to have to go to Bryant-Denny to watch it. So PSA here at the top of the podcast, we're going to discuss, sort of preview it we want to pick two things that we're intrigued to see, interested to see. What do we want to see on A-Day? Again, it's not a traditional A-Day game where there's, the Crimson versus the White or the offense versus the defense like it was last year. It's going to be more of a practice, but there are still things that I think we can learn from watching an entire practice. We have seen a few workouts over the course of the spring, but it's been kind of small snippets, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. We haven't gotten to see the entire thing. I imagine that it's going to be a watered down version of what their practices are normally like, but maybe we can still learn a couple of things. And so with that, Mike, I'll let you start this off because I know where you're going to go with your first thing that you're interested to see. What are you looking forward to seeing on Saturday during the A-Day practice?
Hold on. I'm going to steer this away from transfer portal talk. Let's go to Mike first. Okay.
I wasn't going to go to the portal. I was going to go to the quarterbacks, which is why I called noses, because it's the easiest topic and everybody's going to be watching. Everybody goes into Bryant-Denny. I mean, look, for the average fan who's going to be sitting there, are they going to care about Caden Jones or Rico Scott? Look,
yes,
they're going to care about the quarterbacks.
Them too.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I think 75 to 85% of people are going to be paying attention to basically the entire time. And we're going to see the quarterbacks throw balls into buckets, I'm sure, because that's always something. They did that Fan Day last August. That seems to be something they like to do. I'm sure people are going to take video of that. They're going to get excited about Ty or Austin or Keelan throwing a ball into a bucket in the corner of the end zone. Going to be 7-on-7s. So keep in mind when it's 7-on-7, there's no pass rush. There's no offensive line. So it's kind of set up for the quarterback to do things. And look, one of the things that always bothers me, because it bothers Nick Saban, so I feel like I'm justified in saying this, is when quarterbacks scramble during 7-on-7s. Like Saban has even said it. He's like, the point of a 7-on-7 is to throw the ball. There's no pass rush. There's no offensive line. Why are you scrambling? And it was something, quite honestly, that Jalen Milroe did during practice, I remember. And it's just like, why? Like, you don't have to do that. So I want to see them throw the ball. I don't want to see Ty Simpson take off and run. I don't want to see Keelan Russell take off and run. Like, sit back. There's nobody coming after you, and find a receiver and throw the ball. So that's something that just always bugs me about 7-on-7s, and I hope that doesn't happen on Saturday.
It will.
Everybody's going to be watching 7-on-7s, and again, it's kind of made for the offense. Like, you're probably going to see some plays made during that period because it's hard to be a DB and have no help from the pass rush and cover a guy that long. Granted, we're not going to have Ryan Williams on the field. So that's another thing you're, I guess, not going to see or don't look for, or whatever you want to phrase it as. People are going to be like, where's Ryan Williams? He's not going to be out there by all accounts. He wasn't out there at practice yesterday. Kalen Bohr said he's probably done for the spring, banged up, whatever.
He's out there. He was dressed out, but he was.
I would be surprised if he's doing team drills. If he's maybe going through positional drills or doing whatever, I personally would be surprised if he's out there for team drills on Saturday. And the other guys that weren't out there were Jalen Hale and Cole Adams. So for Cole Adams
and Geno Vandemark,
right, I'm talking about wide receivers specifically. So for Cole Adams enthusiasts, like, you're not, or maybe not,
like you
right? It's possible you won't see him. Like, there was a decent amount of receivers out of practice on Tuesday. So the guys you probably will see, Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton, and then Rico Scott, I think, is a guy that they seem to really like, seems to really be coming along as a freshman last year. And Derek Meadows, I think, will stand out because he's big. He looks like Caden Jones because he's got the size of a linebacker. And Latia Brooks is another guy that people are obviously excited about. So those are probably the main guys you're going to see. Jalen Mbakwe, I guess, 5-star kid.
Excited about the quarterbacks. You're taking everybody.
Right.
Mike just wants to watch practice.
No, I'm getting to my point, which is like, I think it's kind of designed for the quarterbacks to have some success, even without Ryan Williams. Like, there's still going to be some people out there at receiver. So, take that all with a grain of salt, I guess, 7-on-7s, but 11-on-11s, I think, is where you really try to lock in and say, like, what is the quarterback doing? Are they making the right decisions, et cetera? Let me hear it, Cody.
I have some thoughts on 7-on-7 versus 11-on-11, but I also have two thoughts in response to you wanting to watch the quarterbacks.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think I've made my point with the quarterbacks. I think everybody knows they're going to be looking at the quarterbacks.
Well, one of my initial thoughts was the whole Ryan Williams won't be out there. Cole Adams may be in a limited capacity. Watching them on the Airdyne bikes when we got to see practice on Tuesday just brought back tremors from wrestling season. If you know, you know. But my second thought is more of a question, and I wanted to kind of throw it out. Alex, I'll let you start this one. Watching the quarterbacks in practice, 7-on-7, 11-on-11, when they're throwing it into the bucket, when they're throwing it at the goalpost, whatever. What do you want to see to make you feel good about watching them at practice coming out of Saturday?
Don't rupture a tendon. I don't think you get anything out of it. If we're talking strictly like throwing it in a bucket, that's dumb. It's not football. 7-on-7.
I like that drill. I've said that.
7-on-7
I like that
is
drill.
barely football, because as much as Nick Saban's right, like when it's 7-on-7, stand still, you should throw the football. 100% right. Also, it's not football. Because when you're a quarterback, the hardest part is some 270, 320-pound guy racing to murder you. Like, that's football. That's pressure. So I'm not going to like wave away all of practice and all we're going to see in A-Day. There's a chance some quarterback is wildly inaccurate and it's like, oh, that guy can't play. I don't expect that. I'm going in with very low expectations when it comes to changing my mind about the pecking order or who's in this race or who's out of this race. I don't think this practice is going to be set up to do that. I think the only thing that's really set up to do that is 11-on-11, where you have a pass rush coming at you. Not to throw cold water on the whole thing. I'm just being honest. I just don't think I don't think Saturday is going to change the quarterback competition. As much as everybody's going to come out of it saying, oh my God, Keelan Russell's the best guy in the world. Like, that might be true, but it's not actually indicative in one 90-minute practice in front of fans.
I do think that's fair. And I think that the question I asked, what do you want to see from these guys to feel good coming out of A-Day? I don't know that necessarily needs to include a shakeup in the quarterback competition, because I agree with you. I'm not sure that anything is going to change in this one single practice on Saturday. But Mike, you're the one that did bring up the quarterbacks. What do you want to see from these guys to feel good out of Saturday, just over the course of practice?
Well, that assumes that my goal is to feel good. I just want to see. I could feel bad. I could feel mid. I could feel nothing. I could.
Okay, we'll take a step back. What do you want to feel after Saturday's practice?
What emotion do you want to come out?
I want to have some degree of clarity on, like you said, there's not going to be a pecking order, but is it still completely even in terms of who's getting the first team reps? I think, obviously we're going to chart that to some degree. What exactly constitutes a first team rep, if they're kind of mixing and matching O-lines and receiver groups, is tricky. But you want to get a sense of, is it legitimately still open for a guy like Austin Mack or Keelan Russell to be a first team quarterback? Like, I think the answer is probably yes, but is it leaning Ty Simpson in terms of the number of first team reps that he's getting? You just try to get a sense, and you can usually get a feel for that. I mean, you don't want to read too much into it, but there's sometimes a little indication here and there. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if we're truly.
The guy looked defeated. I think that's right. You don't want to see Austin walking off the field, pointing to his agent and saying, "Work the phones." Like, you just want to see guys feel like they believe they're in this competition, because honestly, that's the biggest part of it right now. And I know you don't want this to be a transfer portal discussion, but it's hugely important when you only have 3 scholarship quarterbacks to keep all 3 of those guys happy. So you want to see them all smiling as they leave Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yeah, no, I want to see them compete. It is a practice. Like, go get a good workout and go compete. Just go do what you do. Like, we're just going to happen to be there to watch it for the entire 2 hours or however long it'll be. But
hour and a half.
Yeah, hour and a half. So I just go compete for the 90 minutes, right? Like, that's kind of
that is going to be stretching and, I'll say, BS drills, like probably a decent amount of it. The amount of 11 on 11 reps is probably going to be about 20 minutes. So
better than no minutes.
Right. No, I'm not complaining.
Don't be sure we're even getting 20 minutes, because
setting expectations.
Because that's the other part of it. Like, you want to talk about quarterbacks and say Keelan Russell looks terrible. Well, look at who his offensive line is. If we're really going through this, like, Austin Mack looked terrible at points last year. Well, he's playing with a third team with a bunch of walk-ons. Like, that's why it's almost not worth it if you're talking about it strictly from a perspective of what the quarterback competition is, to do that, to run 11 on 11 in an open practice, because people could get the wrong impression.
You get the idea of where I'm going when we discuss 7 on 7 versus 11 on 11 later. But we'll touch on that in just a minute. Alex, what's the first thing that you're going to be interested to see, intrigued by at practice on Saturday?
I'm going to cheat and pick 2 players, but it's going to make sense. I don't think you're going to get a lot out of 7 on 7. I don't think you're getting a lot out of a lot of these things.
I'll counter that in a minute, but go on.
What you really need to watch is individual competition. And that's why I will say I want to watch Isaiah Horton versus Dijon. That's what I want to see. I want to see 2 guys who have created some of the most buzz in camp go head-to-head, because you got Isaiah, who brings this long frame production, has by all accounts had really good scrimmages. And then you have the star freshman in Lee, who's long as hell, according to Kane Womack, and has made some plays again this spring. So you can't get a lot out of quarterback competition. You can get something out of seeing 2 guys go head-to-head and see who wins that battle, as long as the pass is good. So I'm very curious how those 2 compete. That extends to other positions as well, but I think those are 2 of the guys who have made the most headway this spring. And I'd love to see what that competition looks like in an environment where guys should be, it's not a game, it's not a scrimmage, but they should be a little juiced up to have that many people in Bryant-Denny Stadium, even if it's 10,000, however many actually show up. It'll be exciting for those guys, and they're newcomers. So let's see them do battle.
I like that.
I was gonna say I am interested to see how many people show up. That's not necessarily within the criteria of your question, but
I count.
I don't think the turnout for Fan Day last August was all that great, and I haven't covered a ton of those to have a great comparison. That's in early August when it's blazing hot outside, and people don't really want to sit on a metal bleacher and bake or fry. Yeah, it's probably going to be
great on Saturday though.
The weather is going to be better. It's going to be around 60. Maybe that's actually a little chilly for some people. I don't know. I think it will feel good. The weather will be good, but still interested to see just how many people are like, it's not an actual game. I'm not going to show up, because I think the ambivalence factor is not to be discounted among college football fans, and particularly among Alabama fans at this current moment in history.
I think that matters, and that'll be something worth keeping an eye on. But back to Alex's Isaiah Horton versus Dijon Lee, the idea of individual battles. I'm going to go ahead and tie that into one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing, which is 7-on-7 as opposed to 11-on-11. The reason I would prefer to see 7-on-7 is a lot of the same things that Alex was talking about. The individualness of 7-on-7, the one-on-one nature of 7-on-7, right? Like we're going to get to see, well, I thought we were going to get to see Josh Cuevas on perhaps Nikai Hill-Green or Caden Jones, just to kind of see what that might look like, or perhaps a safety, maybe a Bray Hubbard. That would have been a fun one-on-one to watch. We're not probably going to see Cuevas because he's going to be held out for injury issues. So maybe we'll see Jay Lindsey. That could be kind of fun. Jay Lindsey on a linebacker, Jay Lindsey on a safety. Perhaps.
You're a sicko.
Absolutely. Dude, I love my tight ends. All right. Like, relax. But no, just the idea of Isaiah Horton on Dijon Lee, or Isaiah Horton on Cam Calhoun, or Isaiah Horton against Zabian Brown, or Jeremy Bernard against any one of those. Or do they put Zay Mincy over the top and he has to make a decision depending on where the quarterback goes with the ball? Like watching the secondary do their thing, watching the receivers and the route combinations and all that jazz. And because they won't have Ryan Williams, like, will we get to see more Rico Scott, Lotzier Brooks? Maybe we see Cole Adams. Maybe we see Jalen Mbakwe. How is that transition going? I'm not sure that we haven't really gotten to talk to him. We haven't gotten to talk to Jamarcus Shepard. We'll get to talk to Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer a little bit more lengthier next week after spring ball is done. So maybe we can gain some clarity there, but this will be the first time we get to see it. And so why 7-on-7 over 11-on-11, Cody? Well, I love the trenches. I love offensive line play. Alabama's current status when it comes to offensive line in terms of health and whatnot, like I don't know that we're going to learn a lot from 11-on-11, but I think we can learn more about these athletes and these players in 7-on-7 than we will in 11-on-11, because I do think that just based on where the offensive line is at, the defense is going to kill them. And I don't know that the quarterbacks are maybe going to accomplish anything unless DeBoer blows his whistle and says, maybe don't rush the passer, right? Just to see if they can accomplish anything, which is why that's why I want to see 7-on-7 over 11-on-11.
Well, here's the other thing. Let's keep in mind. None of this is being filmed. Like you're not going back the next day and rewatching this on TV.
You're telling me the hundreds of people that are in that stadium or going to be in that stadium won't whip out their phones and say, look at this.
Yeah. I mean, you might get like grainy footage from the 300 section. I'm talking like TV footage that like someone like you would go back and look on a Sunday and rewatch and look at each individual player. You're not going to have that opportunity. These plays happen quickly. We've all watched practices among us, like 7-on-7 rep goes like that. You're not watching 11 guys. You don't know what Wilkin Formby did against, LT Overton. If you're watching that one thing, then you're missing the other 10 guys. There's other 20 guys in the field. So sometimes you're just looking at the overall result of the play and you don't really know what happened with each individual battle. And in this case, we don't have any way of going back and looking at each of those reps. So consider all of that as well in your calculus and how much we'll get out of it.
Right. I think that's fair. To tie it back to Alex's point, wanting to see maybe specifically, maybe not specifically, Isaiah Horton on Dijon Lee. What's a fair expectation of that one-on-one? If they were to have 10 reps against one another, like how much should the vet win? How much should the rookie win?
It's probably a 7-3 split where the vet wins. But I mean, if you're an Alabama fan, of course you want to see a split right down the middle and you want to see 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, but that's not how it actually plays out. The vet should win those, but it's who's throwing the ball, what the placement of the ball is. There's other things involved there. I mean, if Dijon Lee gets cooked by Isaiah Horton, it's not the end of the world. Like, Isaiah Horton can play, man. I think he's going to be really good this year. So don't freak out if it happens, because at the end of the day, he's creating buzz, but he's a true freshman who I'm going to say the same thing like I've said with Keelan Russell, who's been on campus for like a grand total of 15 minutes. Like, if he gets cooked, he gets cooked.
Well, I'm excited, I think, for that maybe matchup specifically because you got Isaiah Horton, who's 6'4", 205. And you've got Dijon Lee, who's every bit of 6'4", 200. Like when Womack said that he is a long ass corner, like we were at practice yesterday morning, like that dude's big. That dude's really big. And I know we said the same thing about Zay Mincy last year, where you could just tell once he fills the frame out, he's probably not long for the corner position. I made this comment in our practice observations yesterday morning on the board. Go check them out. You can kind of tell that Zay Mincy was eventually going to transition to safety, at least in the drills that I saw, which admittedly not a ton. We were only out there for like 10, 15 minutes. Dijon Lee looks like a very fluid corner. Like, I'm not sure if he's going to transition to safety in the same way that Zay Mincy did. He probably is capable of doing that if he would like to. Like, he's big, he's got the frame, but I don't want to say that frame's mostly tapped out, but like he's filled out pretty well for a true freshman. I'm not sure that like he's just going to be a big ass cornerback. And I think I'm excited just to see like two really big stacked athletes go up against each other. That in that particular matchup, that sounds like fun to me.
There's subtle differences in terms of what your skill set you're looking for in a safety and a cornerback. I think of like Nick Saban talking about a cornerback being able to flip his hips and move in short area quickness. Not saying Zay doesn't have that, but he's just kind of a rangy guy. When you watch him, Lee gives you those traits as a cornerback. So, again, just a true freshman, though. So you can get excited about him, but we'll see.
There's unlimited potential there. So the first round here, Mike wants to see the quarterbacks and literally everything else. Alex wants to see some individual one-on-ones within 7-on-7 and 11-on-11. I would prefer to see 7-on-7 over 11-on-11. Let's circle back for round two. Mike, what else do you want to see on Saturday?
I want to see the new guys, and I know Alex has touched upon Horton, and he's big on Horton. I think obviously Cam Calhoun had some buzz early in spring camp. Dijon Lee seems to have the latest buzz. As we said in the last show, let's keep in mind that Damani Jackson is not practicing this spring, and I think anybody would be shocked if it's not Damani Jackson and Xavier Brown starting against Florida State. And how much that third and fourth corner plays, we'll have to see. But Calhoun and Lee may or may not have a big role in this defense this year. Now, next year, when Jackson is gone, because he's a senior this year, maybe there's an opportunity for, at least one of those guys. Overall, the rest of the transfer portal class, I'm interested because we haven't seen Blake Dowd, the punter. Like, let's start with him for a second. Like, is he good? He's probably the best Division II punter last year. Like, are we going to see him punt at all?
We saw him walk into the practice facility yesterday before practice, so we did actually get eyes on it.
Do they need to go find another punter? Because their freshman punter, Esperuhoff, is hurt from last season in high school. Like, what's the confidence level in Dowd? I mean, Peter Knudsen and Jalen Hobson are probably going to see a lot of at tight end, both walk-ons, but that's all they have right now with them and Jay Lindsey. So we're going to see a lot of those guys. Ultimately, I don't think they're going to play this season. And then Arco Newguam, it doesn't really seem like he's ready to play. I mean, I think at tackle, it's been Olas Salonen stepping in for Proctor, who's been out. Your right tackle's been Formby. Your third tackle is kind of up in the air. I think Olas maybe has a shot to do that. If not, like a Casey Poe or Jackson Lloyd or Michael Carroll. I don't know if it's going to be Arco Newguam, the Ball State transfer. But the meat of this portal class was really Calhoun, Horton, Nakai Hill-Green, who we talked about last show. How much does he play when Lawson and Jefferson are back? I think we're going to see a lot of him on Saturday. And then I'm interested mostly in Draylon Washington, Cam Dewberry, and Kelby Collins, all the three new guys, because I don't know what their roles are. I had bigger hopes for Dre Washington, and I think it's really shown so far. If he's your third or fourth running back, how much is he going to play? If he doesn't feel like he's going to play, this is his last year of eligibility. What does he do in the spring? Cam Dewberry, last year of eligibility. If he's not going to start at left guard, does he feel stuck as a backup on Alabama for his last year of eligibility? Because Geno Vandermark potentially steps into that left guard role. And Vandermark's probably not going to be out there Saturday, so we're probably going to see a lot of Dewberry at left guard, but I'm interested to see what happens when when Vandermark does come back. Kelby Collins, I don't know if he's one of your top 6 defensive linemen right now. I think all indications are your two bandits are Overton and Renaud. Your top 4 tackles are James Smith, Tim Keenan, Edric Hill, Jeremiah Beeman. I think Collins can play either spot. I just don't know where he would play among that top 6. Maybe he's your 7th guy. And what does that mean for him going forward? So I'm not specifically bringing up the transfer portal, but the transfer portal is open a week from today, especially for the guys that this is their last chance. If you are Cam Dewberry or Draylon Washington, and to a lesser extent, Nakai Hill Green, this is your last chance to go somewhere else if you wanted to go somewhere else. So doesn't matter that it's only April. This is when it's open. So I'm a little bit curious because that escape hatch is there if they don't feel like they're getting out of this so far what they thought they might have.
That curiosity makes a lot of sense because everybody makes a big deal of the transfer portal comings and goings, especially when it comes to, you think of the deficiencies from the defense last year, specifically the lack of pass rush. So that makes the Kelby Collins part of this equation very, very interesting. Where does he fit? I know that Kane said early in the spring that he's a guy that they feel like they can play both in and out. And
I think that meant bandit or defensive tackle, because that's what Florida tried to do. Florida did the same thing. They played him at defensive end. They played him at defensive tackle.
And that experiment went horribly wrong because when he played exclusively at defensive end as a freshman, he was effective and impactful, and he was a good player. When they tried to slide him inside, he just doesn't have the size, I think, to be nearly as effective. So that makes me wonder also, like, what was Kelby Collins told, and what are we going to see on Saturday? That's a fair point.
I'm sure there's a reason why Florida moved him inside. Look, I think you try to find a spot for a guy. If he's not totally working at one spot, you just try to find a spot. Like Keon Keeley last year wasn't going to work at Wolf. Let's put him at bandit. Maybe that's kind of the same thing that's happening here. We're just trying to experiment and find where you might fit, but I just don't know where that is. And I'm just curious. Like, I think overall this transfer portal class is good. I think Horton is going to really carry it. I think Calhoun next year could really help, but the rest of the class, you got some bodies where you need some bodies, but beyond that, the impact is to be determined.
First off, we teased Mike about the transfer portal conversation, but it took him almost 30 minutes to bring up Keon Keeley on today's show. So round of applause there.
Well,
I showed great restraint not picking Keon Keeley.
I was going to say, Alex has been on the Keeley train more than I have this spring.
The Keeley train. That sounds great. Alex, you got any thoughts on the transfer portal additions from the winter and how they might fit into the 2025 Alabama football puzzle?
Look, you got to retain them. I mean, that's obvious. You'd hope a guy wouldn't come in and 3 months later leave, but it does happen. So that's not out of the realm of possibility. But if you retain them and everyone outside of Isaiah Horton plays a reserve role, you've still done what you were supposed to do. Because this is still a roster that needed holes to be filled in terms of adding depth. So it's not the end of the world. And like you said, there's still, with a guy like Cam Calhoun, the opportunity for a year from now to step into a starting role. I still think it's early to write anybody off who just got to campus in December, January. So, yeah, you would have hoped more buzz around like a Dre Washington, but I'm not sitting over here saying he's just not going to play. I think it's too early, and we haven't seen, on the flip side of it, if we haven't seen enough from him, I don't think we've seen enough from everybody else in that room to say they're demonstrably better. So let's see what it looks like. Let's see when they're playing with the first team offensive line, how they perform in the summer. There's a lot of things that's still left to be played. And again, if at the end of the day, they're all playing on the second or third team, well, those are guys you needed on the second or third team. So
here's the kind of whack-a-mole thing with that. If Dre Washington is playing, that means somebody else is probably not playing. Yeah. Whether that's Daniel Hill or Richard Young or whoever else, Kevin Riley, what happens to that player? Because I think the clock is ticking.
La vie. At the end of the day, right, if you can't compete, you can't compete. Like,
right. The clock is ticking at the running back position. I don't think they're going to keep all 6 guys much longer. Yeah. That is my gut feeling. And if you're telling me by December 31st that multiple of the current 6 are gone, other than Jam Miller being, in his last year, I would not be surprised.
Alex, what else are you looking forward to on Saturday?
Connor Talty, believe it or not. Every report has been good. And he was a guy who, going into spring, I was like, there's a reason it took this staff like 15 minutes after they came in to say, we got to go find a kicker last year. because it wasn't what they wanted to see out of him. They went and got Graham Nicholson for Miami of Ohio. Connor, worked on kickoffs, but really didn't do much of anything this past year. And I was like, well, what's it going to look like? And so far, so good. And more than what I'm going to see Saturday, because you'll be able to see, look, can he kick the ball through the uprights? We're going to see those things. I think this offense is going to need a kicker, a field goal kicker, because say what you want about Jalen Milroe, they were effective in the red zone. They converted into touchdowns. They didn't need a field goal kicker all the time. Now, could it have changed if they had a really good one? Could it have changed their calculus in that kind of mid-range? Do you go for it on fourth down? Do you kick a field goal? Maybe. But I think overall they're going to need more out of that position. It's good the reports you're hearing about Connor Talty. I'd like to see him in Bryant-Denny Stadium with fans, however many there might be, kick the ball through the uprights, because I think that's going to be important this year.
Right. And not just Bryant-Denny, but also Doak Campbell, Sanford Stadium, Jordan Hare, Williams-Brice at night, potentially. Like you never know until you know with a kicker. Like that moment is very hard to replicate in practice.
Yes.
And as we've known in history for Alabama, doesn't always go too well. But Will Riker did change that.
It's going to be a practice, right? Like, I don't know if they're actually going to get out there and kick during the 11-on-11, but if they do, cool. Otherwise, he's probably going to be kicking against air, but just like we were led to believe, because he handled kickoffs and because maybe Nicholson only had a certain range when it came to the field goal attempts, that Talty had a stronger leg. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see him kick 45, 50, at least attempt maybe a 55-yard field goal. Like, it's going to be against air, so it's probably not the end of the world if he makes or misses it. But I would like to see them at least try that, because then that at least tells me, okay, they got confidence in this guy that he can hit it from that far. So that would be kind of fun to see. Similar to the quarterbacks throwing the footballs into the trash can in the back of the end zone. Like, just target practice. Just get out there and kick the ball, man.
Well, let's not forget, this guy was once the number 2 kicker in his class. I mean, he's not devoid of talent. Let's just see if it can come to fruition.
I like that. Some special teams on Saturday during practice. Last thing I'm looking forward to, it's funny, just went on a little small spiel about how I'm excited about 7-on-7, specifically because it will not include the offensive line. However, I do want to see the offensive line. Specifically, I want to see Michael Carroll and Jackson Lloyd. I want to see where their development is at. I want to see what those guys look like over the course of an entire practice, similar to like how we want to see the quarterbacks go compete and not hang their heads and just keep their heads up and be smiling all the way through the 90-minute practice. I'd like to see the same thing out of the younger offensive linemen. I'm of the belief that Michael Carroll is going to be a huge part of perhaps the present and the future of Alabama's offensive lines. They've been working him at both tackle and guard. I'm curious to see where his reps are going to come from on Saturday. I'm of the belief that he needs to just be at left guard, but I know that they like Geno. They brought in Cam Dewberry. There's just not a lot of room at the end anymore. And also they need some tackle depth. So how is that transition going? How does he look? Is he comfortable? Is he confident? All that jazz. Same thing with Jackson Lloyd, who was brought in to be a tackle. It seems like he's been running with the 2s behind Wilkin Formby. Perhaps he's a swing guy, depending on where Carroll is at. I want to see how he looks. I want to see where he's at in his development and his practice habits. I want to see those 2 guys go compete. And yeah, I mean, like maybe we'll get to see some real actual live reps in the 11-on-11. And that's, if we do, I'm going to be paying probably closer attention to the trenches than maybe anything else, just because I think the defense is going to whip the offense's ass when it comes to offensive line and against defensive line, and just how does that impact the rest of the play in 11-on-11. But I'm excited to see where the young guys on the offensive line are at. It's only 15 practices, but I believe those 2 guys could have very large roles on Alabama's offensive line moving forward. So I want to see where they're at.
Agreed.
Cool story.
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt weird kind of flip-flopping that, like, yeah, I want to see 7-on-7 because I want to see the athletes, but I also do want to see the offensive line. But it's more like, where are the young guys at? It seems like as spring practice has gone along, because of where the injuries are at on the offensive line and because they want to build depth at the tackle positions, we may not see those guys as much as I maybe thought coming up this upcoming season. But where are they? Is the experiment working? Do they need to slide Carroll back to left guard and just leave him there and let him be the forklift that our, talent evaluators believe that he's going to be? I think we always kind of thought that Jackson Lloyd would be more of a 2 guy this year, barring something unforeseen. So I don't know. I'm curious where they're at, because I was excited about both of those guys coming in, and I know we've heard some good things, but maybe not as many good things compared to maybe Dijon Lee, Isaiah Horton, Derek Meadows, some of those other new faces on the team. But I don't know. I'm just excited to see where they're at and the opportunity to see them through an entire practice. The sicko in me is excited to watch some offensive line play as well.
I think in an ideal world, all of those freshmen are playing reserve roles, and they're all signs pointing toward 2026, because it's really hard to be a true freshman and play meaningful snaps in the SEC in the trenches. I know Alabama's gotten lucky with some guys like Cyrus Kwanjo, Andre Smith. Like, they've had guys who've come in and been effective right away. I'm leaving out probably 3 of them. But by and large, you want to give those guys time to develop. And I do genuinely wonder, this is not a Saturday thing, how much Michael Carroll spending the spring at tackle, does that carry on into the fall? Because you basically established whether or not you believe he can play tackle, but do you want to then see, with Caden Proctor back, how much guard can you play? Are you a threat to be a starter in any sort of way? I think they're building versatility. I'm just curious how that changes once we fast forward to fall camp.
Yeah. And this is a college football podcast, not an NFL podcast, but very often you see tackles at the college level get to the NFL and they slide them inside to guard. And I don't want to say it's seamless every time, but NFL people tend to feel confident about taking a left tackle or a right tackle and bringing them inside to guard. We see that a lot at the professional level. So I wonder if there are some traits that Carroll is learning this spring that will maybe help him when he does shift back into guard when Proctor's healthy. And then you also have that backup option at tackle if Proctor gets hurt and, for whatever reason. I don't know. That's another, probably more of a big brain thought, and I'm not smart enough to know the exact answers there, but it's just something that came to mind. That's the A-Day preview. Again, that is Saturday at noon at Bryant-Denny Stadium. You're going to have to be in the building if you're going to want to watch it, or you can subscribe to Bama 247, because we will be providing you updates from the practice. We're probably not going to learn a ton, but I think there are some things that we can learn and some things that obviously we're all excited to look forward to. But that's all we've got today, guys. We will be back sometime next week to recap whatever happened on A-Day. We're going to get to talk to Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, and Kane Womack next week. So we'll probably discuss some of their post-spring comments as well. And then we'll also probably start to look ahead to Mike's favorite topic, that is the spring transfer portal window. So sometime next week, we'll have a few shows to kind of touch on all of that. In the meantime, though, be sure to rate and review this show wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, even our Bama 247 YouTube page. Subscribe to Bama 247 and 24/7 Sports so you can get all of our great coverage of the Crimson Tide. I put a link to subscribe in the show notes. As always, we appreciate you guys for listening. We'll talk to you again soon, and don't forget to do your taxes.